Good morning, Acadiana. It is Thursday, March 11th, 2021, and you're listening to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate. Their team of journalists print the stories important to our community and state, and we are happy to read you some of those stories. You can hear Local News Live Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on AOC 1, the AOC Community Media channel on YouTube, and on Cypress Street Radio at aocinc.org/CS Radio. You can find print versions of these stories and more at theadvocate.com. We couldn't bring you this community service without the generosity of our volunteer newsreaders. Today, we're joined again by Daniel Rayburn. Welcome to Local News Live.
Thank you for having me again.
All right. Well, thanks again. I am going to go listen on Cypress Street.
All right. Well, good morning, Acadiana. It's my pleasure to be here with you once again. As usual, we have quite a few stories to get to today, so we're just going to dive right into that. We'll start, as we always do, with stories from across the Acadiana area. And we begin with this. Detention ponds approved. Residents object to Homewood Drive plan. And this is written by Claire Taylor. The acquisition of land to build 4 detention ponds was approved by the Lafayette City and Parish Councils on Tuesday, while residents objected to a 5th that's in the works. The City Council gave the administration permission Tuesday to secure property needed to build detention ponds on Digby Road and Lake Farm Road, both in the city of Lafayette, while the Parish Council approved the same for proposed detention ponds on the Basque Road and Robley Drive. A cost estimate is not available because the designs are not yet sufficiently developed, said Jamie Angel, Chief Communication Officer for Lafayette Consolidated Government. The councils also introduced a resolution Tuesday to acquire property rights for construction of a 5th detention pond on Homewood Drive, which drew objections from nearby residents. Detention ponds are dry ponds designed to store and slowly release water when levels drop in adjoining drainage channels. The ponds are part of a stormwater management effort after the devastating floods of August 2016, Angel said. The ponds may not be able to prevent such a flooding event, but would help with more frequent rain events that often occur in the summer months and tropical storm season. Resident Douglas Kunze said his home didn't flood in August 2016, but others in his neighborhood did. Lafayette Consolidated Government cleaned canals after the flood, which helped, he said. But after a hard rain of 20 to 30 minutes, roads turn into rivers. Quote, I have no faith in the parish's ability to maintain these ponds, Kunze said. Homeowner Wayne Colvin said the proposed Homewood Drive detention pond would take water from Isle des Cons, which drains much of western and northern Lafayette, and dump it into detention ponds adjacent to Riverwood subdivision where he lives. The area doesn't flood now, but the pond could create a problem, he said. Hydrologists and engineers, Colvin said, advised him that the ponds will only drop levels on the Vermilion River a few inches. Lafayette resident and environmental activist Harold Schoeffler, who lives on the Vermilion River, said the detention ponds would drop the river level less than an inch and suggested one might as well bail the river with a gallon bucket. Detention ponds are expensive and produce nominal benefits, resident Bob Hammock said. Cypress Island Swamp, a natural feature in the Teche Vermilion watershed, could provide many acres of natural detention if spoil banks from dredging done by the Corps of Engineers in the 1950s were removed. Mayor President Josh Guillory agreed, but said if Cypress Island Swamp was unblocked, much of the water would flow into St. Martin Parish. His administration is working with administrators of St. Martin Parish President Chester Cedars on an engineering solution for both parishes. Regarding the Homewood Drive detention pond project, Guillory said approval of the resolution authorizing him to secure the land is one of many steps required for the project to become reality. Neither the Corps nor his administration will advance the project if science does not support it, he said. And now, on to our next headline, which reads, quote, "We can all get through it. Memorial effort spurs community tribute to COVID-19 victims in St. Landry." And this is written by Katie Gagliano. One woman's effort to honor her father after his death from the coronavirus in January has blossomed into a community-wide COVID-19 memorial in St. Landry Parish. St. Landry Parish President Jesse Bellard, Parish Human Resources Director Candace Miles, and resident Kelly Young, along with others, opened the memorial on February 25th at the St. Landry Parish Courthouse on South Court Street. The group placed 241 donated white flags along the southeast side of the courthouse grounds with a banner to recognize the then 241 people in the parish who had died from COVID-19 during the pandemic. As of Tuesday, 245 people were listed as confirmed or probable COVID-19 deaths in St. Landry Parish on the Louisiana Department of Health's COVID-19 dashboard. The flags mirror similar memorial efforts in Lafayette and other cities. Miles said the memorial will be in place for the foreseeable future, with plans to add flags as needed. And residents are invited to use markers in a box next to the memorial banner to write names of loved ones lost to COVID-19 on the flags. The hope is that soon, no more flags will be necessary, she said. Young, who proposed the memorial, said she was thankful the local government embraced the idea and was willing to lend support to the grieving. Miles said it was an important opportunity for solidarity. Quote, "We want to let them know we're all in the fight together, and as long as they all stick together, we can get through it," Miles said. Young's father, 70-year-old Larry Young, died on January 17th after a roughly 2-week battle with COVID-19. Young, a retired licensed practical nurse who worked in family practice, said even with a medical background, she and her family were naive to the danger of the virus. When Young and the family members made the decision to admit her father to the hospital, she said she thought it would be a few days before she came home. She didn't tell him, "I love you," or goodbye, she said. "We admitted him on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, she told me that he was sick. That was the last time I physically talked to him. And I needed to promise to do what needed to be done and that I needed to take care of my mom. I knew at that point he wasn't coming home," she said. Young said she hasn't fully come to terms with the loss, but her father's death has changed her perception of the disease, increasing her fear and diligence. While previously skeptical of the newness of COVID-19 vaccines, Young said she and her family are all planning to be vaccinated after witnessing her father's swift demise. The retired nurse asked others to also heed public health recommendations and take precautions. Quote, "I don't think people realize how bad it is. We didn't realize how bad it truly is. Honestly, you think this won't happen to me or it won't happen to my family. And I think when they see these little white flags and how people have lost their lives just in one parish, I think they'll realize. It makes you realize when you see these flags," Young said. Young described her father as the kindest, most gentle man who was almost bigger than life. He loved his family and bringing people together, which inspired her to find a way for the community to publicly and communally honor the dead in a safe way. A sense of togetherness and being given space to mourn can be important for the healing process, she said. "I just thought it was important, almost like a healing process, to do something to kind of help push our families forward. If it can help people heal by having a memorial to go and do something to remember their family, then that's what I want," Young said. And now, we will move to our next headline, which will actually be a series of crime headlines brought to us by the Acadiana staff crime blotter. And we begin with this. Remains ID'd as Lafayette woman. Human remains found in Franklin in January have now been identified as a Lafayette woman, according to St. Mary Parish Sheriff Blaise Smith. Detectives, using the CODIS system, were able to identify the remains as Casey Marie Collins, 39 years old. Collins' remains were found January 8th by hunters in a wooded area 10 miles north of Franklin. The investigation is continuing as a homicide, Smith said in a statement. The public is advised to contact the St. Mary Parish Sheriff's Office with any information that may be helpful in this case. And our next crime headline reads, Lafayette Police to close intersection. The Lafayette Police Department will close Ambassador Caffrey at its intersection with Gilbo Road on Thursday to conduct a survey of the scene of a fatal crash that occurred Friday, according to a statement from the police department. The closure is scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. and will be completed by 10:30 a.m. During the road closure, police say they will intermittently close the northbound travel lanes of Ambassador Caffrey to vehicle traffic. The southbound left turn lanes of Ambassador Caffrey will be closed, preventing left turns onto Gilbo Road. Westbound lanes in the 700 block of Gilbo Road approaching the Ambassador Caffrey intersection will be closed to all vehicle traffic at Chapel Drive. The crash occurred around 1:45 a.m. Friday and involved a dump truck and two other vehicles. Police say when they arrived on the scene, the dump truck was on fire. Through an investigation, it was learned that the driver of the dump truck hit two vehicles before impacting a utility pole, which then fell into the roadway and caused a power outage. And our final crime headline. 2 killed in Tuesday Scott shooting. 2 people were killed in an early Tuesday shooting in Scott, police say. Police responded to a disturbance on Mill Street at 5:50 a.m. Tuesday. 2 people are dead, and Scott Police Chief Chad Leger said the department is not seeking a suspect in the shooting. No other details were revealed about the incident. And with that, we will now take a short break from the headlines for this PSA. Reach a larger audience. Speak to your local community. Express your uncensored opinion on our hashtag free speech platform. A few of the many reasons to join AOC. Amplify your voice on our channels. Go to aocinc.org/submit. Need access to tools and equipment? Go to aocinc.org/join. You can also tag us when you share your programs on social media, and we'll help amplify your message by sharing on our platforms. At AOC Community Media on Facebook, at AOCINLFT on Twitter, and at AOC Community Media on Instagram. You can find it all at aocinc.org. And with that, we will now return to our headlines, moving away from the Acadiana area and broadening our scope to headlines from around the state of Louisiana. And we'll begin with this. Bill could mean up to $3,600 per child in tax credits. For a decade, Nadia Miller has barely made ends meet as a provider at Claire's Little Lambs Preschool Academy, a daycare on New Orleans' West Bank, as she cares for her 3 sons in their Algiers home. A single mom, 38-year-old Miller typically works 40 hours each week at $14 an hour. The roughly $29,000 she earns annually is just enough to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and expenses for her 2 boys in high school, and the $150 a week tuition at Clara's Little Lambs for her 4-year-old son. But when the pandemic dealt its blow to daycares, with schools and offices shuttered and families withdrawing their children, Miller's hours and pay were cut. Some weeks, there wasn't enough money left for her son's tuition. Quote, "It's definitely been a struggle," Miller said. "I would have to come to the director and say, I don't have enough to pay the full amount. Can I please put something down on my debt, and when I get paid, pay the rest?" Miller's family is among thousands in Louisiana that will benefit from a provision of the sweeping $1.9 trillion coronavirus package passed by Congress on Wednesday. In addition to direct payments to most Americans, the bill also includes a change to existing child tax credits, specifically aimed at helping families with children who struggle to pay their month-to-month expenses. Written into the economic relief package, which became one of the largest in the nation's history with a 220 to 211 vote in the House of Representatives, is what some experts are calling the revolutionary reworking of current tax law. It essentially establishes a guaranteed, regular income for most families with children regardless of parents' employment status. Here's how the child tax credit will work. $3,600 for each child under 6, up from the current maximum of $2,000. $3,000 for each child between 6 and 17, up from the current maximum of $2,000. Also, households are expected to receive the credits in monthly payments of $250 to $300 per child, rather than an annual lump sum in their tax refund. Those monthly payments would start in July. The larger tax credits are available to all low-income families, single taxpayers earning up to $75,000, and married couples earning up to $150,000 will receive the full $3,000 or $3,600 credit per child. The credits are reduced for people who earn more. Individuals making $200,000 and couples making more than $400,000 in adjusted income will not qualify. Quote, "It would be nothing short of historic," said Jan Mahler, director of the left-leaning Louisiana Budget Project, which monitors public policy and how it affects Louisiana's low to moderate income families. Mahler said Louisiana is particularly poised to benefit. Quote, "The only downside to this is that it's temporary." Mahler pointed to the census's 2019 American Community Survey, which showed Louisiana ranked second highest in the nation in child poverty rates, with 27% of kids qualifying. Put another way, 202,300 children, or nearly 1 in 4, lived below the poverty line, which in 2019 was an annual income of $25,750, or less for a family of 4, according to the research group, the Annie E. Cassie Foundation. The American Rescue Plan, which also includes one-time stimulus payments of $1,400 for Americans, drew ire from Republicans who see the bill as a dangerous welfare expansion, including members of Louisiana's delegation who voted against the bill in the Senate and the House. On Wednesday, U.S. Representative Garrett Graves of Baton Rouge, Clay Higgins of Lafayette, Mike Johnson of Benton, and House Republican Whip Steve Scalise of Jefferson all voted no. Scalise blasted what he referred to as a, quote, so-called COVID relief package, saying more than 90% of the bill isn't actually related to public health spending. Graves said he supports the existing child tax credit because raising kids is expensive, and it can defray some of the costs of the pandemic. But he said the bill passed Wednesday goes too far. Quote, "With COVID expanded then extended unemployment benefits alone, people can make the equivalent of more than $30,000 a year," Garrett said in an email. Plus all the food, transportation, housing, healthcare, and other extended programs out there, you can feather your nest without getting off the couch. Then add this new no minimum threshold, fully refundable, advance-paying, age-increased expansion of the tax credit to the mix, and things start to feel less like temporary COVID relief and more like the Democrats are backdooring the country towards a version of universal basic income. President Joe Biden and other supporters argue that the incremental payments would bolster the economy by cutting child poverty by 45% and by more than 50% among Black families nationwide. With the tax credit costing about $100 billion, more than 93% of children nationwide are expected to receive benefits, officials said. The advance payments are slated to begin in July, according to Garrett Watson, a senior policy analyst at the Tax Foundation, a conservative-leaning organization that conducts research on federal and state tax policy. Watson said that in addition to the tax credit increase and incremental allotments, the change does away with phase-in eligibility rules, giving incremental credit for every dollar earned until you reach the maximum of $2,000 credit per child. That essentially barred unemployment tax filters, meaning the poorest families got no tax credit or refund for having children, and many living in poverty got less than the maximum. Quote, "This is definitely a pretty large change, not just in tax policy, but in our social insurance system," Watson said. Shifting from providing working families and households these benefits to all households is pretty large. Mahler underscored that while the policy is radical for America, other countries already have child allowances. He pointed to a 2019 bipartisan study by the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine that concluded any exposure to poverty could be detrimental and expensive. By leaving children with less education, worsening health, and fewer job opportunities down the road, child poverty actually costs the nation roughly between $800 billion and $1.1 trillion annually in terms of lost adult productivity, the report found. Michael Williamson, CEO of United Way of Southeast Louisiana, said that while 18% of Louisiana residents qualify as being impoverished, 51% still struggle to make ends meet, according to an agency report from 2018, which shows that thousands of families can't afford basic household necessities. That meant that they were one emergency away from falling into poverty. Dina Marie Christie, the chief executive officer and president of Family Road of Greater Baton Rouge, a nonprofit that helps families with healthcare and more, said many of those low-income families were also frontline workers and were hard hit by COVID-19. Quote, "What happens when they are the breadwinner and get sick?" Christie asked, adding they would be in jeopardy of losing their jobs, income, and falling behind on bills. Quote, "Monies from the child tax credit can help those families who are struggling to make ends meet. This includes housing and rent, utilities, gas money to drive or catch the bus to work, childcare, clothing, buying medicine or receiving medical care, and food," she added. Miller, the preschool worker raising 3 children, agreed. Quote, "That would definitely help me a lot," she said. And now, we will take another short break from the headlines, this time to bring you the Today in History, famous birthdays, and the daily horoscope. We'll start with Today in History, which is brought to us by the Associated Press. Today is Thursday, March 11th, the 70th day of 2021. There are 295 days left in the year. Today's highlight in history. On March 11th, 1918, what were believed to be the first confirmed U.S. cases of a deadly global flu pandemic were reported among U.S. Army soldiers stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. 46 would die. The worldwide outbreak of influenza claimed an estimated 20 to 40 million lives. On this date, in 1862, during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln removed General George B. McClellan as General-in-Chief of the Union Armies, leaving him in command of the Army of the Potomac, a post McClellan also ended up losing. In 1941, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Lend-Lease Bill, providing war supplies to countries fighting the Axis. In 1942, as Japanese forces continued to advance in the Pacific during World War II, U.S. Army General Douglas MacArthur left the Philippines for Australia, where he vowed on March 20th, "I shall return," a promise he kept more than 2 years later. In 1954, the U.S. Army charged that Senator Joseph R. McCarthy, a Republican of Wisconsin, and his subcommittee chief counsel Roy Cohen had exerted pressure to obtain favored treatment for Private G. David Sheen, a former consultant to the subcommittee. The confrontation culminated in the famous Senate Army McCarthy hearings. In 1977, more than 130 hostages held in Washington, D.C. by Hanafi Muslims were freed after ambassadors from 3 Islamic nations joined the negotiations. In 1985, Mikhail S. Gorbachev was chosen to succeed the late Konstantin U. Chernenko as General Secretary of the Soviet Communist Party. In 1986, the state of Georgia pardoned Leo Frank, a Jewish businessman lynched in 1915 for the murder of a 13-year-old Mary Fagan. In 2004, 10 bombs exploded in quick succession across the commuter rail network in Madrid, Spain, killing 191 people in an attack linked to Al-Qaeda-inspired militants. 10 years ago today, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake and resulting tsunami struck Japanese northeastern coast, killing nearly 20,000 people and severely damaging the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. 5 years ago today, Nancy Reagan's life was celebrated by 1,000 invited guests gathered at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California, to pay final tribute to the former First Lady who had died 5 years earlier at the age of 94. 1 year ago today, actor Tom Hanks said that he and his wife, Rita Wilson, had tested positive in Australia. They were isolated in stable condition in a hospital. With that, we now move on to our famous birthdays. We start with media mogul Rupert Murdoch, who's 90 years old today. Former ABC News correspondent Sam Donaldson has turned 87. Musician Flaco Jimenez is 82. Actor Trisha O'Neill has turned 76. Actor Mark Metcalf has turned 75. Rock singer musician Mark Stein of Vanilla Fudge has turned 74 today. Singer Bobby McFerrin is 71. Movie director Jerry Zucker has also turned 71 today. Actor Susan Richardson is 69. Recording executive Jimmy Oveen is 68 today. Singer Nina Hagen is 66. Actor-director Peter Berg has turned 59. Actor Jeffrey Nordling is also 59 today. Actor Alex Kingston is 58. Former U.S. Representative Jesse Jackson Jr. is 56 today. Actor John Burrowman has turned 54. Singer Lisa Loeb is 53. Actor Terrence Howard has turned 52 today. Rock singer-musicians Benji and Joel Madden of the band Good Charlotte are 42 today. And actor David Anders has turned 40. With that, we now turn to our daily horoscope. And we begin with Pisces, which is birth dates of February 20th to March 20th. Spend more time with people who bring out the best in you. Motivation combined with desire will bring out positive change. Take care of details and live by the rules. For Aries, which is birth dates of March 21st to April 19th. An opportunity coupled with hard work and enthusiasm will help you excel. Use your clout, connections, and intelligence to orchestrate what you want to happen. For Taurus, which is birth dates of April 20th to May 20th. Take a close look at what's going on around you. Listen to the opposition. A little charm mixed with the power of persuasion will help you win support. For Gemini, which is birth dates of May 20th to June 20th. Step back. Use your experience and intelligence to figure out what's best for you. Refuse to let someone coerce you into something that will cause mayhem or cost you your position. For Cancer, which is June 21st to July 22nd birthdays. Use your skills, originality, and vision to encourage others to help you bring about change. Getting back to basics and sharing feelings with a loved one will pay off. For Leo, which is birthdays of July 23rd to August 22nd. Uncertainty will set in if you get involved in a joint venture. Reserve judgment and don't lay your cash on the table prematurely. Make adjustments and take part only when you feel at ease. For Virgo, which is August 23rd to September 22nd birthdays. Refuse to get caught in an emotional argument. Put your energy into making positive gains, improving your life and meaningful relationships, and committing to someone or something you want to pursue. For Libra, which is birthdays of September 23rd to October 23rd. Focus your energy on something meaningful to you. Whether it's learning something new, fixing up your space, or starting a new hobby, the more you put in, the more you'll get in return. For Scorpio, which is October 24th to November 22nd birthdays, stop worrying about the inevitable and focus on making your life better. Pack up what you don't need. Get rid of the clutter and dead weight. The positive changes you make will lead to the freedom you desire. For Sagittarius, which is birthdays of November 23rd to December 21st. Weigh the pros and cons before you make a decision. Verify information and do the math before you take part in something that might put you at risk. For Capricorn, which is birthdays of December 22nd to January 19th. Take a different approach to the way you do things, and you'll get remarkable results. Think outside the box in order to turn a skill that you have into money-making projects. And for Aquarius, which is birthdays of January 20th to February 19th. Nurture your relationship with friends, relatives, and peers. Let go of situations that aren't working for you and focus on what's possible. And with that, we will now return to our headlines from across the state of Louisiana. Our next reads, 80% to 90% in Louisiana eligible for shot. State one of the most open for coronavirus vaccine. And this is written by Emily Woodruff. When Louisiana expanded vaccine eligibility earlier this week to anyone over 16 with a long list of medical conditions, the state shifted overnight to one of the most open states in the United States when it comes to who can get a shot. Nearly 3 in 4 adults in Louisiana are estimated to meet the broad category of overweight that would allow them to receive a coronavirus vaccine, and potentially many more would be eligible due to other medical conditions like cancer and smoking under new rules released Tuesday. Dr. Chantal Hebert-McGee, the newly appointed Region 1 Medical Director for the Louisiana Department of Health, estimated that along with earlier eligibility rules that allowed all people above 65 and some other groups to get a shot, quote, we are pretty much blanketing 80% to 90% of our population. A significant portion of our population has comorbidities, she said. The approach is far more reaching than many states, which have put up more red tape around eligibility by limiting the types of conditions or requiring people to be a certain age to qualify. For instance, Louisiana is one of just 3 states in the country to open to people as young as 16 with one of nearly 24 conditions. The state allows for conditions the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have deemed to put people at an increased risk for severe illness, such as obesity and cancer, but also pulls from a second, broader list. That list includes conditions such as asthma, having a body mass index over 25, or having type 1 diabetes. Many states pick and choose illnesses from both lists, but don't include all of them. Arkansas, for example, includes 11 of the 12 most at-risk conditions, but omits smoking. Ohio does not allow for heart conditions or cancer, but does allow people with Down syndrome and sickle cell disease to be vaccinated. Some states require 2 or more conditions for vaccination, or limit condition qualifications to older people. And while a handful of states allow providers to decide whether a patient should be vaccinated, many others are much more restrictive. In New York, people over 60 just became eligible this week, lowered from 65, though there is a carve-out for public-facing nonprofit and government workers. Quote, Louisiana is casting a wider net than a lot of states, said Jennifer Cates, a health policy analyst and researcher at the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation. Governor John Bel Edwards said Tuesday the decision to expand eligibility came after a slack in appointments over the weekend and was made with the goal of preventing hospitalizations and deaths as more transmittable variants gain ground. Quote, our primary goal is establishing priorities for vaccination would be to preserve hospital capacity and to save lives. That is why we're working with individuals with comorbid health conditions that predispose them to a poor outcome. The new qualifications were developed with essential workers in mind, with the thinking that many conditions would qualify essential workers. That is broadly true, said Cates, but it's not true for everyone. And some essential workers say they feel like they have been left behind. Margette Wolfe is a 21-year-old restaurant greeter in Jefferson Parish and a college student, where she is exposed to a large group of people indoors. She has a vocal cord condition and has been on a daily inhaler for 8 years. Quote, my mom and I have Googled the ingredients, she said, trying to see if her inhaler counts as a corticosteroid, but she doesn't make the cut. Helen Wu, 49, is a registered dietitian and nutritionist who works at a food pantry. In New Orleans, she doesn't qualify under the expanded guidelines either. Quote, I know people who have lied or traveled to other states to get a vaccine, said Wu. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to pretend I have an illness or dress up like an old lady so I can get my shot. Both Wu and Wolfe said they don't want to bend the rules or lie, or instead trying their hand at finding leftover vaccines. But they're frustrated to not be included as essential workers. Quote, I feel like people like us who provide essential services and interact with the public should be given some kind of priority over people who are safely working from home and interacting with no one, said Wu. The lack of focus on essential workers is something epidemiologist Susan Haseeg has watched play out all over the country. Quote, I would argue you should be doing workplace-oriented vaccinations, that we should have mobile units that are setting up in the French Quarter where there's a high density of restaurant workers, said Haseeg. They don't have a lot of control over how they might be exposed. Balancing vaccine distribution between risk of illness and risk of exposure is difficult, said Mike Springborn, a health resource economist at the University of California, Davis. Quote, there are trade-offs all over the place, he said, adding that in some instances, the best method is to vaccinate vulnerable people directly, but under other conditions, it's more important to simply reduce the spread in the broader community. One problem with that is that there is not good data on how well the vaccines prevent transmission. Another problem is some people may not realize they have one of the qualifications. Brenda Rainbolt's family urged her to mark the smoking box to qualify, since she smoked 20 years ago. But the 64-year-old felt that was a lie. Plus, she had to enter her insurance information and didn't want it to affect her coverage. Quote, I'm not comfortable marking that block when it says smoking, said Rainbolt, who works in a public library and lives in Shreveport with her son, a high school history teacher and football coach, and daughter-in-law, an ICU nurse on the COVID-19 floor. Quote, my health insurance has me as a non-smoker, and the rest doesn't fit at all. It wasn't until she spoke with a reporter and tapped her weight and height into a BMI calculator that she realized that she had a BMI of 25.6, above the threshold. She said now that she knows she qualifies fairly, she planned to drive to a site and wait for a leftover. And now, we'll move on to our next headline. And it reads, States' nursing homes may open wider. Vaccines increase. Community spread decreases. More family and friends may visit loved ones inside nursing homes under new federal guidelines issued Wednesday to open the hard-hit residential centers wider than they have been at any point in the coronavirus pandemic. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said, quote, responsible indoor visitation should be allowed at all times for all residents, regardless of vaccination status of the resident or visitor. The new guidance, the first from the center since September, is the closest the agency has come in a year to allowing life to return to normal inside the country's devastated nursing homes. Senior living centers have been on strict lockdown to prevent the spread of coronavirus, which preyed especially on residents who often have the underlying health conditions that make the virus more lethal. There are exceptions to the new guidelines, however. Limited visits with unvaccinated residents in a home where less than 70% of the residents are fully vaccinated in a county or parish with a test positivity rate of above 10%. There's limited visits with a person currently diagnosed with COVID-19 or a resident who is quarantined. The agency cited the rollout of more than 3 million vaccines in nursing homes as one reason to loosen restrictions. In Louisiana, community spread, one of the best indicators of the effects in nursing homes, has plummeted in recent weeks, leading state officials to relax restrictions on businesses and gatherings. The new federal guidance was hailed by industry and advocacy groups. Quote, the indication that nursing home residents can visit with their loved ones is welcome news that we fully support, said Mark Parkinson of the American Healthcare Association and the National Center for Assisted Living, a leading industry group. Now, thanks to the vaccines, we cannot wait to safely reopen our doors. Andrew Mull of the Louisiana office of the AARP called the new guidance, quote, a good thing. We are entering a new phase of the pandemic, he said. We think there is critical need to allow more families to visit their loved ones. Louisiana reported only 23 new nursing home infections on Wednesday, the fewest since the virus established its foothold in the state's nursing homes last spring. The coronavirus has claimed lives of at least 2,800 nursing home residents, and almost 16,000 have been infected, along with more than 11,000 staff. The Louisiana Department of Health has followed the federal guidance on nursing home visits. A health department spokeswoman did not immediately reply to a request for comment Wednesday. Clay Peer, administrator of Forest Manor in Covington, one of the hardest-hit nursing homes in Louisiana, said the health department will provide crucial information on how to implement the new federal recommendations. Quote, we will have to remain cautiously optimistic going forward, he said. We can't move forward until we get that clarification from our state office. Nursing homes were caught flat-footed when the pandemic intensified last spring. They closed to all visitors and took other protective steps, but the virus still found its way in. About half of the total deaths inside these homes occurred between last March and May. Advocates for elderly people have expressed worries that the prolonged outbreak and isolation from loved ones has harmed long-term care residents' mental and even physical health. Residents, Pierce said, are ready for visitors. Quote, they are very anxious to get back to the old way. Currently, some homes permit indoor visitation depending on whether they have had a recent outbreak of the virus and the parish positivity rate. Outdoor visits are encouraged. In some cases, touching is still allowed. No parishes currently have a positivity rate higher than 10%, which would eliminate the federal exception unless those rates rose. Under the new guidance, the federal agency recommends that nursing homes continue to keep people apart from one another and hold visits outside. Quote, this continues to be the safest way to prevent the spread of COVID-19, particularly if either party has not been fully vaccinated, the agency said. Of the about 270 nursing homes in Louisiana, only 16 reported new infections among residents in the past week. The vast majority of them saw only a 1% test positivity rate. Across the state, coronavirus cases among nursing home residents have dropped by 95% from early January, when infections surged through nursing homes and reached historic highs elsewhere in Louisiana. Health officials have attributed that drop to the rise in vaccinations, coupled with falling cases in communities, which tend to run in tandem with infections inside of nursing homes. The CVS and Walgreens drugstore chains were tapped last year to administer vaccines to long-term care facilities and assisted living centers, an undertaking that at times has drawn criticism for its pace. As of Wednesday, CVS said it's delivered more than 28,300 doses for people at more than 130 nursing homes, and was almost finished with its rollout. Walgreens has provided more than 27,600 doses to residents and staff at more than 140 long-term care centers. And now, we will turn to the world of sports for what will be our last headline of the morning. And it reads, Lasting Legacy. St. Martinville's Jalen Mitchell hopes to follow in Uncle Daryl's footsteps by leading team to state championship. And this is written by Mike Kopage. 19 years after his St. Martinville basketball team won a state championship, Daryl Mitchell Jr. is cheering on the Tigers as they tried to repeat history. But it goes deeper than that. Mitchell Jr.'s nephew, Jalen Mitchell, is a senior point guard for the number 11 seeded Tigers, who came from behind to upset number 2 Wasman in the Class 3A semifinals on Monday at the Cajun Dome. Mitchell Jr.'s team won the 2002 Class 4A title in Lafayette. Quote, I hadn't been there since the state championship, said Mitchell Jr., who was named Mr. Basketball before going on to star at LSU and as a professional. Quote, I've always been on the floor playing. For me to be on the opposite side, in the stands, it was nerve-wracking. After St. Martinville went into the half down by 2 points against Watsman, Mitchell Jr. said he couldn't contain himself any longer. Quote, being the competitive guy that I am, watching the game lit a different fire in me, he said. I tried to go into the locker room at halftime. Although he was thwarted in that effort by security, Mitchell Jr. waited near the locker room door for the team to emerge. I caught them coming out of the locker room, he said. Call it a speech if you want. I gave them some words of encouragement. During the game, it was easy to hear Mitchell Jr. and his brother Jelani, who were screaming at the top of their lungs. Quote, for me, it's special to watch Jalen grow from a child to a senior, Mitchell Jr. said. It could be even more special for him to win one. I told Jalen that they have a chance to make history. Now that they're playing in the final, everyone is posting old photos from 2002. St. Martinville is going for a 4th straight upset of a higher seed when the Tigers face number 1 Madison Prep on Thursday in Lake Charles. But Mitchell Jr. said you can throw the seedings out of the window. Quote, where's the upset? Where are the people assuming it's an upset? Seeding means nothing when you get into the playoffs. When Mitchell Jr. was a senior at St. Martinville, his father was the head coach. These days, Daryl Mitchell Sr. attends every game, even riding the bus to away games. Quote, it's been great for me to watch them all come through St. Martinville, Mitchell said. Jalen is the son of my daughter, Christy. People won't have to worry as much because this is the last of the Mitchells. Mitchell Sr. isn't just supporting his grandson. He's also supporting coach Imura Jones, who served as a longtime assistant before taking over the program. Quote, I'm proud of him, Mitchell said of Jones. All he does on the bus rides back is tell me that I taught him well. He was quite a player, too. He picked up a lot of things along the way to make him a great coach. I'm very proud. After scoring 23 points in his team's 61-58 win at number 3 Sophie B. Wright in the quarterfinals, Jalen Mitchell was held to 6 in the semifinals. Quote, "Jalen didn't have a great game, but I told him he didn't play badly," Daryl Mitchell Jr. said. "You know how kids are. I just hope they're focusing on Thursday. I'm going to leave Houston a day before the game because I probably won't see them on Thursday. I want to catch the guys before the game. We barely talk about the legacy, but I know what I have to do," Jalen Mitchell said. They know what I have to do. It's just a family thing. Even though Daryl Mitchell Jr. averaged 24.6 points per game as a high school senior and shot 41% from the three-point range, Jalen was skeptical at first. Quote, "At first, I didn't believe the hype about my uncle," he said, "but then I went and watched some clips. Basketball is in their DNA," Jones said of the Mitchell family. "When Jalen was in the 6th grade, he was already telling us he was going to take us to the championship one day. And he'll get that opportunity Thursday." And now, before we close today's program, we have another short PSA. And it comes to us via the United Way of Acadiana. The United Way of Acadiana is offering free tax preparation services through its Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. The program provides low and moderate income individuals and families with free, reliable assistance with filing federal tax returns. There are 12 filing locations participating this year throughout the Acadiana region. Most locations are by appointment only due to COVID-19 safety restrictions. Please visit unitedwayofacadiana.org/VITA for site locations, opening dates, and to make appointments. For additional resources, visit myfreetaxes.com to learn more about alternate free or low-cost filing options currently available. The VITA program is just one way the United Way of Acadiana is working to help individuals and families achieve and maintain financial stability. Learn about additional programs by visiting unitedwayofacadiana.org. Now, we will take a look at the funerals today in the Acadiana area. There's only one to report today, and it is for Vivian Barras, with service at St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church in Scott at 10 a.m. With that, this has been Local News Live for March 11th, 2021. And I've been your reader, Daniel Rayburn. Join us at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday on AOC 1, Cypress Street Radio, or the AOC Community Media channel on YouTube. You can read these stories and more at theadvocate.com and find out how to volunteer and more at aocinc.org. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you will join us again tomorrow. Have a great day, Acadiana.
just to remind you again, you can reach a larger audience. If you're a social media creator, speak to your local community, express your uncensored opinion on our free speech platform. A few of the many reasons to join AOC. Amplify your voice on our channels. Go to aocinc.org/submit. Need access to tools and equipment? You can go to aocinc.org/join. You can also tag us when your program's on social media, and we'll help amplify your message by sharing on our platforms. You can find all this info at aocinc.org, and you can tag us at AOC Community Media on Facebook, at AOCNLFT on Twitter, and at AOC Community Media on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in to Local News Live. Have a great morning, Acadiana.